So the BVCA, the British Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, there it's our mission to promote diversity and inclusion within private capital. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we mean the participation of people from all ethnicities, socio-economic backgrounds, genders, and sexual orientation. We partner with Level 20, a not-for-profit organisation which also champions diversity in private capital. And we survey many members to establish where they are at in their diversity journey. So in September, we reached out to many firms. We were delighted that the response rate was 60%. So that was up from 40% 2 years ago. And the reason that we see this as such a positive is that it illustrates the dedication that the industry is placing on diversity and inclusion and supporting that journey. We'll have a look at LP requirements within due diligence and kind of compare where we are nation to nation. I mentioned Level 20, and I'd just like to reiterate some facts that we covered earlier. So last year, Level 20 released its first comprehensive data set, analysing women working in the industry across Europe. So they reached out to over 1,000 firms within 13 different countries. And the stats were very telling. So 20% of investment professionals in Europe are women, 20%. And if we look more closely at those figures, and look at women occupying senior positions in the industry, it's 10%. So our question is, what do we need to do to change this? What do we need to do to try to drive change so that women are in senior positions and making investment decisions? So I'm delighted, and I'm joined by some fantastic women today working in the industry. I'm delighted to introduce Kelly Carter from S&P Global, Monica Natchler of Abris, Genta Hissi of Aon, and Cynthia Dellum of Infravia. Would you all just like to take 2 minutes to very briefly introduce yourselves, and then we can delve into some of the questions?
Sure thing, I'll go first.
Thank you.
So Kelly Carter, I work within our software solutions business in EMEA, specifically responsible for our limited partner and multi-asset segment. So really excited to be part of this conversation, and yeah, looking forward to some of the questions hopefully we're going to get from the group as well.
Monica Nahua, Abris Capital. We are a mid-market GP based in Central Europe in Warsaw. Is it better now?
Yes.
Thank you for your help. So once again, Monica Nahua, working for Abris Capital. We are a mid-market GP based in Central Europe, Warsaw. We manage 1.3 billion in 3 funds, and my role is to build and integrate ESG standards within our portfolio, but also to work with our investors. And I'm also heading the Level 20 committee in Poland for the last 3 years. We're trying to change that reality, following your footsteps.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Genta Hissi. I'm working in Aon since September 2022. I'm leading the Southern Europe team. I was working in investment banking for 15 years. Less women in that in that segment, but I'm delighted to be here today and to talk about women. Yeah.
And I am Cynthia Dellum. I work for Infravia, which is a French private equity house specialized in infrastructure and technology investments. I work in the investor relation team and joined about 2 years ago after having spent as well 15 years in investment banking, which we could discuss is pretty poor in diversity.
Thank you all. So perhaps we should examine where diversity sits on the LP due diligence agenda. Kelly, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, sure. I think certainly the view at S&P is that we're in a bit of a unique position because just the solutions and platforms that we put within the private equity world, we have a unique vision of sitting between the LP and the GP. So we know that obviously ESG, DEI is a priority for both sides, right? We see the requests and we see the questionnaires that the LP clients are putting into the GPs, and so we know quite clearly it's a priority, right? And I think regulation has kind of obviously pushed that to the forefront. I think the challenge is actually once the GPs are reporting on that data, right? What are the LPs doing with it, right? How are they demonstrating the decisions that they're making with that information? And I just think maybe right now that's not quite clear.
Brilliant. Monica, did you have any thoughts on that?
Also, answering your question, where does it sit? My conviction is that it sits in the questionnaires, and that's it. Well, we receive tens of those questionnaires every year, and I can say that diversity climbs up on the list. So it was always a part of those questionnaires, but now there are more questions. They are more in depth, which of course is a great thing. Luckily, we measure, or we have the data. But the other part of the coin is that we never see any results or any conclusion to those questionnaires, because we know everybody fills those questionnaires, because we don't know what the LPs do with this data. I don't think that teams which are not diverse don't get money anymore. I don't think managers or funds who don't employ enough women or who don't hit the 30% ratios get too much of feedback from the investors. So, you know, my thoughts are it's a good place. It's a good place to start, but I think we're a bit late. You know, they started many years ago, so there is a time for action now.
Excellent. So maybe a call for action there. Cynthia.
Yes, I think we are indeed receiving a lot of questions related to diversity, but also equality and inclusion. They were before part of ESG questionnaire. I think we are noticing that now they are more by themselves as a dedicated topic. But diversity is indeed gender, but it's also a lot of other things. It's diversity of background, education, social, culture, but it's also diversity of thoughts, experience, ideas, and the way we try, and I think also our investors look at how we integrate diversity. It's really in our investment decisions, because you need a diverse team to have a 360 view, to see all the risk and opportunity, and investors really look into the corporate culture and how we build up our teams, how we attract talents, we retain them, and we try to really have a diverse team. And we think that brings more performance. But the questionnaire are pretty nascent, so it's complex to build that in front of the data. So with the years and as we progress, obviously we can build more insight and more knowledge around the data and build up some correlations.
Yeah, I agree. The data collection point is so important, and that's why we're kind of working with Level 20 to collect that data to drive the change within the industry and measure where we're at and where we can be. So how can we foster a diverse next generation of leaders, and what are you all doing in that space?
So, great question. Let's say that it's the challenge of our generation. We are in the middle of a past generation with some legacy in terms of social impact awareness of organizations. And we have an increased attention to diversity and inclusivity topics nowadays. I think that we are the generation that should make the change, and we need to take action, and maybe thinking about some levels into which we can take action. For sure, I think that we have to lead from the top, because as we were saying before, money money leads, leadership is, so we need leadership to be aware of these topics. We need leadership to fully understand that diversity and inclusivity benefits the organizations. So we need them to take action in different ways. Maybe, for example, just putting in place committees for diversity and inclusivity with a broad representation of the whole organization, of course, and HR functions. Collect data. We were talking about data, so data is fantastic. We need to collect data, but also analyze data and not from the surface. But we need to, we don't have to assume the needs of an organization, but we need to collect data and analyze these needs on the basis of that. And what else? We need the C-level people to get engaged into this. We need them to plan and to take action together with the whole organization. So I would say that this is the main point, leading from the top, a lot of awareness from the leadership. Second point, we need the diverse talents to shout out their needs as of today, because they need to ask for data to organizations. They need to ask for transparency in career paths, succession planning. So this is important, I think. And the last, so we need to raise, let's say, our kids today that this diversity will be their normality in the future.
Brilliant.
So if I could add to this, we are, our strategy is ESG transformation, so we do a lot of things within that area. And one of our programs, which is called DEI Commitments, it's a kind of journey that we invite our portfolio companies to. And it starts with the first commitment, which says create a readiness. I don't think you can make change among senior guys, CEOs, CFOs, whatever, if they don't want to participate in that change. So we offer them trainings, workshops, and we help them understand that the diversity is a good thing. So the framework for readiness is the first step. The second step is the commitment to have 30% of senior people involved in the decision-making at the supervisory board or management board taken by underrepresented gender, which of course in vast majority of businesses means 30% of women. Not easy, but we are progressing there. And when you have a framework and readiness and you add those 30%, sometimes a bit by force, you create governance. So, and governance means people who will make those decisions. And we treat people as the most valuable resource for every business. Human capital is the most important element of creating the value. So we have to make sure that this resource is represented in the decision-making, strategic decision-making, the same way as sales or money or procurement. So we say, the third commitment is for every portfolio company, the chief people officer, famous HR guy or lady, the chief people officer must become a board member. So the human capital, the most important resource, gets the voice and the personal KPIs to be delivered. Historically, those KPIs were the 5% of extra on top of EBITDA and sales. Now we are making it a full agenda for at least one board member. So there will be the owner who will make sure that the navigation goes in the right direction. The next commitments are about creating the HR system. So we come with templates, with systems, with solutions. We help them integrate them as quickly as possible. Another one is about being humble. Like we commit that every year we review those systems and those situations, and if they don't work, we'll change them. So it's a constant learning. And the last one relates to the situation I went through over the last 20 years of my life working for private equity. It's about being the only woman in the room. I got so angry with this 2 years ago. I was so frustrated and fed up that we added the sixth commitment, which says, make the difference where you can. So we will very, very strongly encourage our advisors, lawyers, investment bankers, whoever gets money from us to come back only with diverse teams. If they don't, they have to explain. Next time, if they come back in the same team, they don't get the job. And you know what? It works.
This works with investment bankers.
Yeah. And I think there was an example of that on last year's panel. I can't remember who the speaker was, but they gave exactly that same scenario. But and I think it's really good to hear from you the way that you are working with the portfolio companies in that approach. And through the lens of S&P Global, you know, we're a massive company, 34,000 people globally, but we have a chief purpose officer that is on the executive board. They are responsible for our people leaders, our DEI piece, and we all know that it needs to start at the top, but you do need to be able to do that training and give the guidance, and it needs to filter through down the business, right? And so we've been working on mandatory training around unconscious bias across the business. So for example, in the UK, we actually trialled out with a lot of our men people leaders going through the interview process and saying, actually, you need to bring a female in with you when you're doing interviews so that you can actually see and get the feedback on maybe some of those unconscious biases that you have in that interview process. And the feedback was outstanding. Like, I mean, the men really did not realise how they were thinking when they were interviewing women, obviously, particularly. But yeah, for me, I think it's all about training, and we can be at the leadership in terms of that thinking, but you have to be empowering the people below to obviously have that diverse thinking as well.
Can I just add one thing to Kel? Because this is really great what you just said. Recently we had this discussion among our investment committee about one of our portfolio companies, because our investment committee covers also portfolio, about this one company which operates in healthcare, that we need to strengthen the team. And the CEO is a man, and he has 2 board members who are women. He was recruiting, together with my colleagues from the deal team, another person for sales and operations. And, you know, bad luck, the best candidates were women. And my colleague sitting next to me was explaining the situations to the rest of the investment committee. And just for you to imagine this, there are 8 guys and me sitting there. So this colleague says, and guys, can you imagine how he would feel being surrounded by only women? And I was, yeah, I do.
I think you're right in terms of one of the big points is around empowerment by the senior leaders, in particular the male senior leaders. In my previous role, I remember there were a big pitch in New York for an IPO, and they put together a big team of 7 white male pale that went there to pitch the IPO, and they didn't get the role because they made a big point around the fact that the board of the company was not diverse enough, and they didn't realize that, you know, they were showing something themselves and they were advising something different. And so a lot of empowerment from senior leaders is very important. And individually, I think we can also all try to find our own style, try to find what we want to do, where we want to do it. So there's also a lot of responsibility individually. But collectively, as an organization, we have the tool to train people, to mentor them, and to help them in their leadership, in their development, and in their career path. So it's kind of dual responsibility for me everywhere. And where you find the right place, where you are well, you thrive much better. You are much better able to jungle with family life, which definitely is a big issue in this industry, and I don't think we should avoid that point. And it's best for everybody. But again, it's a long-term investment, and a strong empowerment from senior leaders is important.
Yeah, I think the family planning point is a very good one as well. And I think as we see diversity and inclusion move from just a box-ticking exercise to a more long-term strategy, which, as you say, is set by the board, we'll see kind of improvements in those areas, which then will force the retainment of talent. So that's been brilliant, but perhaps we should now just quickly touch on some of the experiences that embed diversity in succession planning. I wondered if you're able to kind of share any of your own experiences or that of the firms that you work in.
Well, I was saying before that I started in Aon in September 2022, and I'm very happy to share that I was a part of succession planning with diversity objectives in their mind. So I think that Aon in that process managed very well the hiring, but by looking at external talents, for example, and but not looking a carbon copy of the manager who was heading the same role before. It's that guy there. But looking for a different set of perspectives, and here I am today, and I'm very happy of being here. Let's say that I tick the box for some of the diversity areas. I'm a non-European citizen, female, under 40, and not Catholic, and so it was a great choice, and the hiring process was managed in a way that it was really encouraging because, for example, the first interview was with a female leader sitting in the board of advisory board of the company with similar background. So it was a great push for me to choose the company, and very encouraging to go through the next steps of the hiring process. So so let's be kind. Let's have in mind diversity and inclusivity objectives, and let's structure the process, the hiring process, in a way to be encouraging and helpful to people.
I was also, in my current role, I was also a part of the succession planning. I joined Abris almost 6 years ago, and this was at the time when the founders were transferring the operational management to a new team. So the managing partner, Paweł Gieryński, who is somewhere here today, decided that he wants to extend the team and for the first time invite a woman to the table. So he asked me to join. I joined with the head of ESG and investor relations, and developed over time. But I must say, it was not easy to take over the function from the founders who created the firm. They created the culture of the firm. So not only taking their job, but also changing it and making it very, very different. There was a strong pushback, and it was not easy at the beginning. But what helped, and I have to go back to my first sentence about the questionnaires, what helped was that I started ticking boxes for our LPs, and our LPs would give them credit for changing that. So it was, oh, okay, let it be, let her stay. But since then, you know, it's funny because after 5 years, I had a dinner with my partners, and we discussed, well, what changed over those 5 years. And one of my colleagues said, actually, I don't even remember how it was for us without having a woman before. So I think, you know, at the beginning it hurts, but then you don't remember.
It was simpler.
I was just going to add, actually, within S&P, we've actually only just, which I'm quite surprised about. Actually, I've been with the business 5 years, but we've actually just launched our first cohort for succession planning. So, with out of 10,000 employees, they've identified 50 up-and-coming next generation leaders, which you would think, you know, S&P Global, we would have been thinking about that a long time ago, but. You know, there is a lot of evolution going on, but again, I think it goes back to you know, how are we identifying those leaders? How are we making sure that we have that diversity going through? And there's still questions that we're answering today, but I definitely think, you know, having that cohort and then being able to come with very like-minded people, and again, I've looked at that group, it is very, very diversified globally, you know, race, age, gender. So I do think, yeah, that would be something that I certainly say to, maybe even to the LPs, right? When you're getting that data and you're looking at that DEI data, you know, what are you asking back for the GPs? And maybe that succession planning is one of those actions.
Fantastic. Cynthia?
Yes, well, at Infravia, I think the company is pretty, I mean, it has 15 years and the management is pretty young. My experience of that in my previous role was actually, I would say, pretty bad because I think you need to look in the long term. So you need to invest in the people you want to invest in for the long run. And so you need to have the confidence that they would be around. And I think in investment banking, that was really one of the big problems. We were very much too much focused on short term. And there were no investment in talents at the time on the longer run. So they were building their succession planning without it, I would say, on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we're drawing to the end of our session and that everyone will be pretty hungry and we've gone over time. So I'd just really like to thank all the panellists today for your really fascinating insights. Thank you all for attending. I hope that you leave feeling empowered to drive change. And if you'd like any more information on kind of stats, please head to the BVCA website or Level 20 website because all the reports are on there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your lunch.